Hello and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day 511. 511 days that we've been covering the frame-up, Spygate, whatever you want to call it. August the 3rd, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just a quick note before I get started here. Just remember, as I mentioned last week, there will be no TowerGate video on Saturday or Sunday. So this is Friday's video, but there will be no video Saturday or Sunday because, as I said about a week ago, I'm going to be going camping with my girlfriend and her two teenagers, and we're going to be having a non-digital weekend. No digital devices, none. We're going to go hiking and biking. We're going to play card games and board games. We're going to talk. We're going to have some fun. What we're not going to do is play with digital electronic devices. We're leaving all that stuff behind. I will bring one phone with me, which I'll hide so they'll not know it's even there, just in case of emergency or something like that. Other than that, though, we'll see if the kiddies can handle 2 days without digital devices. And my girlfriend as well. She's also an addict. So, that's what we'll be doing this weekend. Little camping. We're not going to be roughing it or anything. I'm actually renting a really nice camper. So we're not going to be roughing it, don't get me wrong. We're going to be eating very well and probably sleeping very well, having lots of fun. It's going to be a digital-free weekend. And, of course, there won't be any TowerGate videos, which is kind of weird because I've been doing this now for 511 days. I think there's been maybe 4 days that in that time that I haven't done videos because I was 2 days I was out of town for my job, and I had 2 days where I had other issues. But for the most part, 511 days with very few interruption. So this will be a planned interruption, which will be the first really planned interruption. So anyway, I don't know what you guys are going to do all weekend, but I'm sure you'll be staying informed and doing whatever you do. Maybe some of you will go do some camping or put away the digital electronics for 2 days and see what that's like. Either way, that's what I'm going to be doing this weekend, and then I'll be back with you on Monday. So, let's go ahead and get started. Well, most of you have heard the remains of, it looks like, I don't know how many, but I think it was like 55 or something like that, but the remains of quite a few American soldiers who died in the Korean War, who were killed in action, were returned this week. And that's a pretty major event, you know, especially because it's coming from North Korea, something that, you know, we had been trying to do for years and years and years, could never get it done. And Trump just made it look easy. So anyway, that was a fairly good news story that you think would get plenty of news coverage. But it appears that on CNN, they gave that story exactly 58 seconds. 58 seconds is what CNN devoted to that really good news story. And of course, over there at MSNBC, absolutely zero did not even report on it. Unbelievable. I mean, this is a fairly major story. Now, of course, if Barack Hussein Obama would have been the president, or the Rotten Reverend Clinton, they would have done 24-hour round-the-clock coverage. They would have followed the plane from wherever it was, anywhere in any part of any free country in Europe. They would have followed the plane all the way here. They would have had round-the-clock coverage. They would have had glowing accolades for the Rotten Reverend or Obama. They would have had special guests on talking about what an incredible foreign policy genius he is. All this, it would have been played to the hilt. But with President Trump, what's he get? Nada. Dick. Shouldn't surprise us, should it? Of course not. Well, here again, another example of Trump derangement syndrome. We have this Democratic candidate for the Attorney General. The Attorney General Democratic candidate in, I believe it's New York. And her name is Zephyr Rain Teachout. I'm serious, that's her name. Zephyr Rain Teachout. She is currently a law professor at Fordham. Why should that surprise us? A law professor in New York. And she has promised, one of her campaign pledges, she's promised if she's elected, not only to abolish ICE, but if elected, that she would prosecute ICE agents for their criminality. Alrighty, there you go. Again, and the photo I saw of her, she's standing right next to Ocasio-Cortez. It's just unbelievable. This is, I mean, unhinged. It's absolutely hard to believe that serious politicians taking these positions and believing that they'll get elected on them. Now, maybe in New York she will. Maybe in California she will. Maybe in Seattle or something she will. But the majority of the country is going to look at this stuff like it's insanity. Because it is. Because it is. It's Trump derangement syndrome. It's a disease and it's spreading. You don't want to catch that, boy. It's obviously erodes your brain. It erodes your brain is what it does. Obviously, Trump derangement syndrome erodes the brain. And it happens to you whenever you see Trump or hear Trump or anything like that. You just go crazy, nutty. And that's apparently what it is. So anyway, let's move on to the next topic. Of course, you know I've been following the Iranian situation. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. I talked about the fact that the currency is practically valueless now, which is leading to a great deal of poverty. And believe me, when hunger starts to set in, people start getting a little crazy. And that's what's happening in Iran. The protests are getting even larger, and the response by the regime is getting even more serious, to say at the least. So we have the huge protests continuing in 6 major cities across Iran, including in the capital of Tehran, which is usually their stronghold. Usually they put down the big protests in Tehran. They just start shooting people. They were doing it just a few days ago. They were shooting people a few days ago in Tehran. But apparently, instead of backing down, more and more people, I mean, they're willing to die for the cause at this point. And that's bad for the regime because, you know, we've seen these Iranian revolutions before. Saw one in 53, we saw one in 79, and we know these people know how to revolt. They really do. And it looks like they're committed. They are very, very committed. And it's just a matter of time that regime is going to fail. The Iranian government has now threatened protesters with the death penalty for organizing against the regime. But like I said, massive poverty is set in. The currency is pretty much almost worthless at this point. And the cities are essentially being described, the major cities in Iran being described as war zones. War zones with a rapidly collapsing currency. It will likely end up very good for the Iranian people, but they're going to pay a heavy price. And of course, you know, nobody really wants. You know, we've gotten involved in Iranian revolutions twice before, and it never turned out the way that we hoped it would. And we should stay out of it. You can already hear rumblings from some people in the West, the neocons specifically. They're wanting to put the Shah's grandson, or Pahlavi, his son actually, because it was the one Shah, then his son. Now they want to put the younger Pahlavi Shah back into Iran. It's like, no, we already did this. It doesn't work. Stay the hell out of it. You know, I wouldn't mind maybe a covert operation to run some weapons into the anti-regime folks. I wouldn't mind helping them out in their cause. I just don't want to decide the future of their country for them. You know, help protect them, give them some weapons, whatever. Do some things that would maybe make it difficult for the regime. You know, start screwing with their communications. Start doing some other things. Tighten some more restrictions on them. There's things that we can do to help push them over and help the people to get this over with quicker so they suffer less. But what I'm not in support of is deciding their future. They'll decide their own future. We need to stay out of it. I'm all for helping them, but I'm not for wanting to come in and colonize them again or calling for the Shah. No, we don't want the Shah coming back. No. No. I can't believe the neocons actually want to relive that nightmare again. And these are people who, the neocons never learn. They never learn. That's the problem with these people. They never learn from their mistakes. Federal judge dismisses lawsuit by Seth Rich's parents against Fox News. The judge has ruled that the Riches failed to state a claim, and what he's saying, they really didn't actually state anything specifically that they could prove that Fox really did. And they were basically saying that the Fox caused them emotional distress by pushing conspiracy theories. Well, I mean, I guess if that's the way they feel, they can certainly feel that way. But I don't know that that's a case. I don't know if that's a case. If you got a case in court, clearly the judge thinks they do not, and he has ruled that way. And it's sad. I mean, I feel sorry for the Mr. and Mrs. Rich as far as their son Aaron. I don't know. I'm very skeptical of him. I kind of think he may have had a role to play in what happened. I know he works for like Northrop Grumman. So I don't know what's going on there with the Rich family. It's a very strange situation all the way around. I mean, they're I think they're nice people, but they've just exhibited a lot of very peculiar behavior, fairly inconsistent peculiar behavior over this course of time. And I just have always felt like that they've been pressured, and a lot of things that are like this lawsuits and things like that are actually coming from other places, not from them. And I don't know. I just there's a lot of problems with the whole damn thing, as you know, with Seth Rich. But it's sad with the parents. I certainly can understand, their sorrow and their grief and their anger and all those sort of things. And I don't know what they really think, though. I just don't know. There's a lot of things going on around the Seth Rich case, not just with what happened to Seth Rich and everything else around it, but also after his murder and all the things that happened regarding his parents and his brother and all the various people that moved in to try to provide cover or try to have interaction with them, and the way they acted right after it. And then all of a sudden along comes the PR spokesman, Mr. Bauman, and then along comes a few other people, and then Mr. Berkman and all these other people. And there's just a lot of strange things going on around the Seth Rich situation, not just the murder, but the behavior of his parents and other people around him. It's just, there's a lot of things going on that really stinks. And I do hope someday we get to the bottom of it. I really do. Unbelievable. Rasmussen, just about a week ago, I reported to you that Rasmussen had Trump at 50% or 45%. Now, Rasmussen showing Trump at 50% approval. That's up 5 points in 1 week. Now, for those of you who don't know, Rasmussen really was one of the most accurate polls in the 2016 election. Now, they too underreported Trump's support, but that's not so much because Rasmussen was running fake polls like a lot of the other media was running fake polls. Rasmussen was running real polls. It's just that we know that there was a certain percentage of people who were not wanting to admit that they were going to vote for Trump. They basically tell people on the phone, no, I'm going to vote for Hillary or something, and they went and voted for Trump. So you can't attribute all that to Rasmussen, but still, Rasmussen, at the end of the day, after the 2016 election, turned out to be one of the closest polls. And I remember in a lot of the polls, I was throwing Rasmussen out as an outlier for some time. And then by the time we got into, late summer, early fall, like late August, early September, I began noticing, of course, the size of Hillary's rallies, Trump's rallies, and I started thinking, you know what, Rasmussen, they keep polling higher than everybody else, and I keep throwing them out. Maybe I shouldn't be throwing them out. Maybe they're the most accurate, and it turned out to be they were. So, for those of you who don't know, Rasmussen polls Trump every week. Once a week, Rasmussen polls Trump. They've been doing it since week 1. And you can go and look at their website, and you can see exactly where he's polled all the way from beginning until this week. Every week they do the poll. So he shot up 5 points in 1 week. He's up to 50%. That's well above where Barack Obama was at this time, or George Bush was at this time in their presidency. Unbelievable. Here's another story that's just going to blow your mind. AFL-CIO union head Richard Trumka has told Newsmax that he is considering supporting Trump in 2020. The AFL-CIO has supported every Democrat presidential candidate since 1972 except George McGovern. The AFL-CIO is composed of 56 national and international unions. They represent over 12 million active and retired workers. Trumka totally supports the rewrite of NAFTA and Trump's taking on the trade issue. Yeah, this is incredibly bombshell. This is bombshell because, the Democrats rely heavily on the union vote. And Trumka, this guy, in case you don't know much about him, he's an arrogant son of a gun and typically has nothing ever good to say about any Republican. He's hardcore always with the Democratic Party. They obviously had a lot of issues back in the 90s with Clinton when Clinton signed all the free trade agreements, but they eventually, they never really kissed and made up on that issue, but they never really left the Democratic Party. They still continued to be loyalists. But to see Richard Trumka, a guy who's a heavy partisan Democrat who generally despises Republicans, to see him even consider voting for Trump. And remember, a lot of the union members Trump is kind of like their leader. And if Trumka says, yeah, I have to go with Trump. I think he's better for our workers. If he does that, remember, 12 million union workers, and a lot of them will follow behind. It reminds me of Reagan. Reagan got a lot of union support, even though the national union leader of the labor union at that time did not support Reagan. A lot of members did, and we saw that in 2016 with Trump, I think. But if Trumka himself comes over and says, yes, I think I'm going to support Trump in 2020, he could bring millions and millions. And these are important votes, because these are not, minorities in urban areas per se. These are blue collar, middle class workers in Middle America that belong to these labor unions. These are skilled laborers, electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, all sorts of things in the trades. And of course, we know that Trump's just had this big initiative trying to increase the ability for people to get into these trades. He's got like $1 billion plan for grants and stuff that people will be able to take advantage of to learn these various trades that are used in the construction industry and in the steel industry and things like that. So, this is all things that would appeal to union workers, in particular to Mr. Trumka. And it's obvious that that we're seeing a major crack in the dam here, because generally there was no daylight between the union leadership, the national union leadership, and the Democratic Party. Even though they'd have disputes between them, especially over trade, there was never any indication that they would ever consider going over and voting for any Republican, let alone Trump. But as you can see, if Trumka is saying this to Newsmax, he's either doing it to send a message to the Democrats to try to get them to pay more attention, or else he's serious and he really believes that Trump's better for his labor effort and better for his union members, and he's probably feeling some heat from a lot of them. And that's what that tells you. And this could be epic. This could be epic. I mean, this is, if Trump, in the next two election cycles, in 2018, 2020, if he brings even 50% of union members into the Republican tent, under the Republican tent, wow, that will be absolutely it will be death knells for the Democratic Party. It literally will be death knells. Because remember, a lot of the activists and people who do a lot of the work on the ground in the Democratic Party, it's done through the labor unions. Not to mention the money that flows into the Democratic Party from the labor unions. I mean, it's their activist base, it's their money, it's a lot of their money base. It's a huge deal. So we'll definitely keep watching this as we move closer to Election Day, not just 2018, but especially in 2020. It appears that Paul Ryan's super PAC is now backing Pelosi for Speaker over Jim Jordan. He's a bum. Yep, why should that surprise us? We all, again, that shouldn't surprise us, and that's why I said weeks ago. I mean, Republican members just need to go ahead and tell Paul Ryan, they need to go ahead and have that vote for Speaker now. They don't have to wait. There's nothing in the rules that says they have to wait. They can call for a new vote anytime they want. Just go ahead and depose Ryan now. He's dead weight. Depose him now, have the vote now, hopefully get Jim Jordan as the Speaker, and just let Paul Ryan ride out his last few months, in the dugout. Who gives a damn? He's not doing anything anyway except for fighting and obstructing the agenda. Paul Big Ears, Eddie Munster Ryan. His super PAC now backing Nancy Pelosi for Speaker over Jim Jordan. That is absolutely, what that tells you, I mean, that's just, I could understand it if it was a sane Democrat. But, to back Nancy Pelosi and want to make her the third most powerful politician in the country, that's beyond political partisanship. That's just stupid. And that tells you a lot. That tells you a lot about Paul Ryan and the type of people he associates with. He's looking forward to that super high-paying 7-figure job, maybe 8-figure job, working for his wife's friends. She's a Democrat, connected to a lot of Democrat special interests, a lot of super wealthy people. That's what it's all about for Paul Ryan, Big Ears Ryan. The sooner he goes, the better off we'll be. Don't know how many of you saw the interview with Devin Nunes on Tucker Carlson, but Tucker Carlson is basically begging Devin Nunes in this interview. He said, "Hey, leak those 20 pages that were redacted in the FISA application. Leak those to me. I'll put it on the air." And he was telling Nunes, "It's your obligation to leak that stuff." Because Nunes said it's a national security issue. It threatens national security if he doesn't. If those 20 unredacted pages aren't 20 redacted pages aren't unredacted and to make it available for people to see. That's the point he was making. And so Tucker Carlson's like, "Yeah, well, that's a great point. And in that case, go ahead and leak it to me right now. Leak it to me right now." Devin Nunes, of course, wouldn't go quite that far, but he said what Jordan and Gates and a lot of these other guys have been saying. Hey, we've sent a letter to the president telling him to declassify those 20 pages. So, what is it? Because Nunes says those 20 pages are so damaging that that if they are unredacted and released to the public, Nunes says essentially they will explain, and he was being sarcastic, they will explain this sort of mosaic that J. Edgar Comey was describing when he gave his testimony in front of Congress, when he described the intelligence was like a mosaic. No, it really wasn't. So what are in those 20 redacted pages? Well, a lot of people are suspecting, well, it's just, more damaging stuff about the dossier, but I don't think so, because we get the first part of the application, which is pretty much their number one thing they lead with, which is the dossier. And then they move on from that, talk about the Isikoff article, which was also, of course, it was sourced by the same person, Christopher Steele. They failed to mention that to the FISA court. So I don't think that they would go back to the dossier. I don't really think that that's what the 20 pages are about. I know Nunes can't talk about it, but I'll tell you what I think are in those 20 pages. I think what's in those 20 pages are the activities of the agent provocateur, informant, spy, whatever you want to call it. I think that that's what those 20 pages are talking about. The other information which came through, and I don't even think it came through Five Eyes Intelligence, because I think that they short-circuited that process. I think it went directly from Halper to the British intelligence, and from British intelligence directly to the CIA, and then it was funneled back to Steele, or funneled back through Confusion GPS, or someone like that. Part of the laundering of the intelligence. So I think what's in those 20 pages have probably a lot more to do with intelligence-related things that will lead back to the CIA and probably that multi-agency or 6-agency task force. I think it's something like that. And I think the reason they don't want to release it is because it will begin to shine the light on the other part of this operation, which was all going down in Great Britain and England. I think that that's why they redacted it. It's not so much sources and methods as much as it will reveal the other part of this story that no one has ever really talked much about, which is the things that were going on in the UK and in Europe. The meetings that were going on, Mr. Misfit, the Papadopoulos thing, all that stuff happened in Europe on the other side of the pond. And that's probably what is in there, and it probably is the stuff that came from Halper. And it appears, essentially, it was a intelligence laundering operation. It appears to me, and I think to anyone with any common sense and logic, is that essentially they were manufacturing fake intelligence, and they were feeding it to certain individuals. One of those individuals was Papadopoulos. They were trying to feed it to Roger Stone and Michael Caputo. They didn't bite at all. Papadopoulos may have bid on some of it, but at some point wised up and figured it out. And then, of course, when the time came for Halper to try to get it out of him, Papadopoulos, obviously, according to his wife, smelled a rat and decided not to say anything, which angered Halper. So he leaves, and then his partner tries to get Papadopoulos drunk at the bar to try to get him to spill his guts. He still doesn't. He understands exactly what's going on. He smells the rat, and then that leads to them bringing in another player. That would have been Mr. Downer, who we know bypassed the normal procedure for moving intelligence. It didn't come through the Five Eyes when it should have. And I think that that's what's in the 20 pages. I think in the 20 pages is what would reveal the CIA or intelligence side of things, which is where all this really began, and it's what will lead us to the 6-agency task force or multi-agency task force. It will show the collaboration, cooperation going on between our intelligence, British intelligence, manufacturing the stuff, running the setups, running the frame-ups, running the entrapment, all these sorts of things, and eventually all of it being compiled and then moved into the FBI via the State Department. So I think that that's what's probably why they redacted those 20 pages. I don't think it has anything to do with the dossier or Papadopoulos or even the Tower meeting or anything like that. I think what's probably those 20 pages are probably the stuff that's the foreign intelligence stuff that came from Great Britain or came from the intelligence assets being used to run the frame-ups. I think that's what's in those 20 pages, and maybe that's why Nunes says if that's released, it will blow the lid off of everything, and we do need those 20 pages released. And I wish Trump would declassify them. Maybe he will after the midterms, maybe before the midterms. It's hard to say. His political advisors are telling him not to do it. I wish he would ignore them. They've given him bad advice before, and the way things are right now, he needs to release, in my mind, declassify everything. The entire thing was a sham. It needs to be completely exposed, 100%. 100% sunlight, the best disinfectant. Jim Acosta, CNN. I'm sure some of you saw that press conference today with Sarah Carter. All I have to say to you, Jim Acosta, is that yes, in answer to your question, Jim, yes, you are the enemy of the people. You are the enemy of the people, Jim, and your network, and many other networks like yours. Yes, you are enemy of the people, of the country, the Constitution, and everything it stands for. Many of you have heard about the Enron investigation. Some of you are probably, say, under 35 or so, probably, or 30 even, probably don't even remember the Enron thing that went down in the early 2000s, but it was a big deal. It took down an entire gigantic corporation. It sent the top 4 or 5 people in the company to jail. It turned out that the entire investigation by the Justice Department was full of fraud and deceit and lies. One of the chief lawyers on that case was Andrew Weissman. They were eventually 4 of the 5 convictions were overturned. They took a tongue lashing, and they actually even got investigated. I don't know if any of the lawyers were held accountable. I don't think they actually were, but clearly it was exposed as a horrible, horrible moment in time for justice from the Justice Department. It really showed us exactly how corrupt the Justice Department is, and it's only gotten worse. That's the same Justice Department we're supposed to be counting on today to get to the truth. Mystery, my dear. Now, who was it that headed up the Enron investigation, the teams? Who was in charge of the overall team and the Enron investigation? This horrible event, miscarriage of justice, all sorts of horrible shit going on, including suborning perjury. They actually found that they actually motivated witnesses to lie, including the very chief witness against, I believe it was Jeffrey Skilling, whose conviction was eventually overturned, but not before their lives were destroyed, an entire company destroyed, thousands of people's jobs lost, lots of money lost, millions and tens and hundreds of millions, probably, people's investments lost. Lots of people got hurt in that deal. And it was all a frame-up, essentially, by the DOJ. The guy running the team there, Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray. Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray. Judge T.S. Ellis drops the hammer on Mueller and the Hillary donor posse. Judge Ellis has told Uncle Bob and his team that they cannot prove a key part of their case unless prosecutors call Rick Gates to the stand. Of course, they're terrified of cross-examination of their key witness, Mr. Gates, after hearing the opening opening statement from Manafort's lawyers. And of course, once hearing the opening statement, they basically play a little teaser game with the judge and the jury to say, well, he may or may not testify. And of course, so today, Judge Ellis basically setting the record straight. He's like, look, the case you brought here is bank fraud, not Mr. Manafort's lifestyle. So you better be prepared to prove your case of bank fraud. And by the way, you cannot prove your case of bank fraud without your star witness, Mr. Gates. Which means, and then the attorney for Uncle Bob said, we do, he is, part of our plan to put him on the up here to testify, which is what they're terrified of, because they know that Manafort's lawyers are going to shred Rick Gates and probably find that he was lying, and they may find further than that Uncle Bob's team was working with Mr. Gates to perpetrate this lie. They've been caught suborning perjury once before in the Enron case. Maybe they're trying to do it again. This time, they will not get away with it. Judge Ellis is running a very, very tight ship there, and it's not looking good. I think Manafort's going to beat this rap. He still has another case pending, but I think he's going to win this case. I honestly do. 62% of Americans say that the FBI showed bias in the Trump-Clinton probe. That's a Harris poll. That's a Harris poll done for The Hill. A Harris poll done for The Hill. 62% of Americans say the FBI showed bias in the Trump-Clinton probe. Unbelievable numbers again. Let's go back just for a moment. Of course, I call this TowerGate. Okay? And that's because on March the 4th of 2017 is when Trump tweeted out that Obama ordered wiretapping of his campaign. Or basically made the allegation that Obama had ordered the wiretapping of his campaign. March 4th, 2017. So I started doing my TowerGate videos. But now that you look back on that, what did Trump say? He said Obama ordered wiretapping of his campaign. Obama. We all seem to forget that, even including me. So from the very beginning, Trump was telling us that Obama was behind it. And how would he know? Mike Rogers told him so. Mike Rogers probably told him so. Or at least whatever Mike Rogers told him, Trump figured out, well, that couldn't happen without Obama. But isn't it strange that at the very beginning, from day one, when this whole thing started, when Trump started it by that tweet on March 4th of 2017, he essentially told us that Obama was the guy who ordered the entire operation. Just thought I'd reflect on that for a moment. Now I want to comment very quickly on two comments that were in the comment section from the last video. Terry made a very good comment, and I'm glad he did, because he was commenting on the fact that of the Trump effect in Europe. And it's just one of the things I've had on my list to talk about, but a lot of times I don't get to everything on my list, and that's one of those things because it's kind of a foreign policy thing, so I don't talk much about it. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Terry. I hope a lot of people read your comment. It was a very good comment. Where he's talking about how we have, of course, Viktor Orban, who's being called the Donald Trump of Hungary. He's using the phrase "Make Europe Great Again." We have Geert Wilders over in the Netherlands saying "Make the Netherlands Great Again." Another guy who's using a lot of the things that Trump uses. Of course, we've seen what's happened, of course, in Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, Italy, Slovakia, and various other European countries. And you can see that the Trump effect is definitely, it's having a big effect in Europe. Because, as I said in a previous video, the number one issue that they have in Europe right now, besides just all the problems with the EU in general, trying to have one financial economic block, one currency block, it just doesn't work. But aside from all that, is the immigration issue. It's really, really taking its toll now, and it's causing a lot of these countries to really rethink the migrant issue, the immigration issue. And of course, Trump made it a major issue in his campaign, and now it's been bumped up to the number 2 issue as we go into the 2018 elections. Number 2 behind the economy. So it's really, a lot of this has started with Trump. And so yes, we are seeing the Trump effect all over Europe, all the way from Western Europe, whether it was Brexit vote or what's happening in the Netherlands, all the way into Eastern Europe, the old former Eastern Bloc, all the way into the Mediterranean with Italy and other places like that in the Mediterranean. So interesting to watch the Trump effect in Europe. So we'll just keep watching it all. And I will be back with you on Monday after enjoying a weekend of camping non-digital. So you guys have a good weekend. I look forward to seeing you back on Monday. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate all of you. Bye.